Call to order this meeting of the Bedford, Massachusetts Finance Committee. It's March 12th, 2026 at 7:02 p.m. First order of business is public comment. Given that we're in person, does anyone in the room have a public comment? Well, that was easy. Overall budget, I don't think we have much to say there. I left it there in case we might. Warrant articles. I think I asked Tony to go first. This is the two articles. I know that the decrepit car article was not presented by you guys, and it's pretty straightforward, so we voted it already. Unless you
Which one?
The decrepit car, I forget the name of it.
Oh, that'll work. It's the modification to unregistered vehicles, which is Article 32, I assume it stayed as
It did.
32.
We voted it based upon the town manager saying that they really put it on the warrant, not you, but if you have comments on it.
Well, in the meantime, this was a joint initiative through the town manager, police chief, code enforcement, and myself, where there's a handful of situations around town where there are what we might otherwise consider to be junk vehicles kept on people's property in higher numbers than the neighbors find appropriate. The zoning bylaw allows you to have one unregistered car currently, so that you can have a car that you're maybe fixing up or working on or for whatever hobby you may have. But there's at least one neighborhood where there's a resident with many vehicles, boats, trailers, and other objects on the property, but the investigations by the police department and code enforcement end up finding out that the vehicles happen to have had registrations, and therefore they could not take enforcement action to request them to be removed. And so we were asked if there was a way to modify the regulations so that there might be a requirement for the vehicles to be inspected, not just registered, but make sure that they actually are operable. And so we've added both the terms, we've added the words uninspected or non-operable to the types of vehicles that you should not be keeping on your property. We put forward a similar language for insertion in the general bylaw as well. And the reason we did that is because zoning is not the mechanism to solve a pre-existing situation. So zoning really is only applicable from the date of adoption forward. So if you have an existing situation and we change the rules, you're allowed to keep going forward with the status quo. And so, but general bylaws are able to have a much higher enforcement power. And so in the general bylaw, we put a sunset provision in so that there would be the rest of the year for non-compliant properties to come into compliance.
We could have grandfather's cars.
Yeah. And so the select board on Monday recommended approval of those moving forward, and the planning board on Tuesday recommended approval of those going forward. One particular resident who's negatively impacted thinks that this is still not enough to resolve her concerns, but we will see what happens.
Well, she can try and convince town meeting of the correctness of her position.
Correct. She may well come to town meeting and ask for a floor amendment of some sort to add more language, but I think on the other hand, the departments with enforcement powers think that these changes are sufficient to get at the issues.
Well, at the very least, it'll be better than it is now.
Better than better than the current.
So, the wording hasn't changed on this, except for the "or" that was inserted.
Yes.
There's an "or" that was inserted. We voted that, and we voted approval. Does anyone want to talk about this and change our vote or not, or is it fine the way it is?
I wasn't here last week, so I didn't vote, but I don't know, this seems like an enforcement thing that,
Right, but you can't enforce anything that you don't have in the charter, for example, so put it in the charter, then you can enforce it.
so the warrant article is that the vehicle has to be inspected and operable.
Yeah,
my-
so you're allowed one that is not. And,
Yeah, so who's gonna determine whether they're operable, like who's gonna do the diligence, the police, I guess?
Yeah. The police, and sometimes in cooperation with the code enforcement director, which is our inspector of buildings, who is who by default is the zone enforcement officer. So it's a combination of enforcement of both bylaws
Yeah.
by
So,
police and code enforcement.
and so this is only, in the town of Bedford, there's only one incident, one person?
Well, no, we believe we believe there are others. There is one particular situation where there's 10 or 12 offending vehicles scattered across the property that a neighborhood is extremely concerned about. They've been the most vocal. There are others in town with more than one.
What's their concerns, is that just aesthetics, or is there safety concerns?
A combination of aesthetics, but also environmental concerns. And I don't, so I would rather have the neighborhood explain what their issues are, but
Yeah.
they're not here.
I mean, I'm empathetic, I mean, I'm also concerned about like, people's rights of their own property, being able to, maintain what's on their own land, I guess, to some degree. I mean, the aesthetics thing is another aspect of it, you can put up a fence, build the trees, or whatnot, but the whole finance committee unanimously supported.
Yeah, I believe it's a unanimous vote.
Well, if you guys also wouldn't just keep the vote, don't re-vote it for me, I guess.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, you don't have to re-vote it for me, but I think I've acknowledged my concern.
Yes. The rule, which people seem to not understand, is it's okay to close the door, you just can't prevent people from coming in. So we're gonna leave this the way it is, which is we recommended approval.
If you guys all support it, I mean, my one vote's not gonna change it, so I'll leave it alone.
Tom, Phil, Mark, what do you think? Okay, so we'll just leave that as approval recommended. And then the other two that Tony was gonna speak to are the cottage overlay and the starter home overlay.
Yeah, so Article 30 proposes a new section in the zoning bylaw to create cottage overlay district opportunities. The overlay district would enable multiple dwellings on a single property up to a density of 10 units per acre. But in exchange for allowing multiple units on a single property, individual homes would be limited to 1,850 square feet. That number may seem odd, but that number comes from recently enacted state legislation known as the Starter Home District, which is Chapter 40Y of Mass General Laws. a particular property in town that has been exploring how to put multiple retirement homes on their property since longer than I've been here, brought forward this idea of, because we had over the years been talking about friendly 40B options or other types of zoning amendments, but this new option under Chapter 40Y opened the door to something that was of interest to the board, which was capping the size of the houses that might be built. The legislation that the state has enacted sets a floor of a density of at least 4 units per acre. The concept that they brought forward is ended up wanting to the yield of the concept they were working on for this particular property is 10 units per acre. The planning board ended up being receptive to 10 units per acre as a density. And so the bylaw as is being presented to town meeting allows up to 10 units per acre. So it's a little more dense than other provisions in the zoning bylaw where we have 5 or 6 units per acre for certain types of development, but not as dense as the 15 units per acre that's mandated in the multifamily overlay district that was part of the MBTA communities law, passed at about the same time as the starter home districts was released. So the board was trying to find something that might be also replicable in other parts of town, and so they did set requirements that there be at least 40,000 square feet per, so you need about an acre minimum for your property to be considered for this option. Like if you've got a 5,000 square foot lot, and maybe you've even already got a duplex on it, your property's going to be too small to pursue this option. This is also being set up as an overlay district so that every time it wants to be applied somewhere, it's got to go through town meeting. So it can't be used if town meeting doesn't agree to allow it to be established on any given piece of property. So those are the basic parameters. There's some minimal landscaping requirements. There are goals related to accessibility because we're an age-friendly community and we are an aging community. And so we are trying to minimize steps. Like, if you leave the builders to their own traditions, they tend to try to mount houses up and you end up with 6 or 8 steps to get in the front door because they want it to be higher in the air than all the neighboring houses. So here we try to say, we want these to be as close to the existing grade. The first floor should be as close to the existing grade as we can get it. We are encouraging energy efficiency, universal design inside the structures. We are we have some pretty traditional setbacks in order to provide some buffer to existing abutting residences. So it's very traditional in most everything except that the density is a little higher, but there's a cap on the size of the houses. For comparison, when we were looking at the Coast Guard housing, when I came here 10 years ago, what is now Pine Hill Crossing, those dwellings were restricted to 1,500 square feet, and that project allows, I believe that project allows 6 units per acre, because there had been public charrettes about that property leading up to its redevelopment that had envisioned, or the town had been receptive to 29 to 35 units of total density on it's about a 5-acre piece of property. So that concept, when we were working on it, we had been trying to figure out if there was a way to make something there as a cottage district that could be applied elsewhere. We ended up only using it for Pine Hill Crossing. This concept with this board, they were hopeful that, they're open to it being considered in other locations. But at the moment,
Why
the
did they
subsequent
expand up to 10 as opposed
why
to
not
staying
keep it at
with?
the 4?
Yeah, well, at the, whatever, at the 6, like the Coast Guard.
Oh, at 6.
If that was what was discussed with public feedback and comments.
Yeah, so in discussing what will be, is what comes up next with Article 31, that particular project, and given changes in the world economy, with the cost of construction, the cost of labor, and the cost of land, they don't believe they can make 6 units per acre financially feasible. And so the board accepted that, and accepted the idea that in this, in this type of a layout, that
Who is they?
the planning board members that agreed that this was 10 units might seem big because Bedford's not really used to 10 units per acre. But again, because there are limits to the size of the individual houses, they're limited to 2 stories and a shorter height requirement than is otherwise. Like, they could otherwise take this acre of land that they have and build, the bit as big a single-family house as they think they want to build on it, and versus building a handful of cottages, essentially, although they may or may not be attached into 2, duplexes, but the idea was that because the units are smaller, that and because it's just the sheer cost of building has skyrocketed in the last 5 years, that they accepted 10 as the density threshold.
So when you mean by cottages, they have 10 units on an acre, and they're standalone units, or can it be like duplexes or complexes?
They would effectively be 1 or 2 family houses, not an apartment building.
Okay.
Like, so you couldn't couldn't build 1 structure with 10 units, and the intent is that they be smaller single families, whether we call them cottages or bungalows or some other
But could you have
feature, and then, or you could attach,
Could you have like 5 duplexes?
yes.
So would it be similar to the new construction on Loomis? Like, what's the density of
So
that
Loomis
space?
is being built at 15 units per acre. So that property's, to
Okay.
be honest, that property's the same size, different shape, but it's the same total size. So that project that you see under construction, where there's the four townhouse buildings on the
Yeah.
way at 38 and 44 Loomis, where there's 14 units being built there. But that's being built under the multifamily overlay district that we adopted because the state mandated that we put multifamily somewhere.
And then,
So this project that's on Elm Street, that's the subject of Article 31, would have 9 total units. So 5 fewer than you see under construction at Loomis Street. Another difference is that the Loomis Street project is the rules there allow higher, taller structures. So and there's no cap on the individual unit sizes, so those units are also bigger, so they're tall. The townhouses in Loomis are bigger individually, both in total size and in height. then could be built under this overlay district that's now proposed.
George, do you have more?
Yeah. Do we know roughly how much these types of cottages go for? Because I'm not bought in on, there's two cases for this, right? Starter families to make it more affordable, and then like for some more seniors to live in place.
Yeah.
I'll start with the seniors, the live in place one. Unless there's zoning bylaws to say these cottages are only one floor, I find it really difficult. Like I have aging parents, right, where they live in a townhouse that is multi-floors with pretty steep stairs to get to the second, third floor. At some point, they're not going to be able to do that. And so I can't imagine the developer coming here to build smaller units, but 2 or 3 floor townhouses is not, in my mind, like aging in place. Like because
Yeah.
when you get to a certain age, there's no way you're going to be climbing stairs.
That is a coming issue with the aging of Bedford. Here, the units under this overlay district can only be 2 stories, so you're not gonna, you can't get, you can't even have an attic that, with space that you might try to convert in the future, so there's no lofts allowed. It's literally just 2 floors of living space. But stairs are likely to be involved if they propose an upper level. We agree, it would be great if they could all be 1 floor living, but that would be the builder's choice, because we're not imposing that in the zoning. We also don't want the town as a government to be imposing an age restriction.
Yeah. No, I hear that. It's just
So,
I hear that we want to build more for residents to age in place, but then in my mind, if you want to really build something to age in place, complexes, to be frank, are the best ones because they've got elevators, they're single floors or multi-floors, but they can get to within the units they're on first floor. So I'm not bought into the aging thing. And the other question was on the pricing thing. So like are these cottages in the like.
So pricing is probably still gonna be in the, Bedford's at a point now where you're looking at around like $500 a square foot. And so, even though, so,
$900,000.
yeah, I mean, you're probably still gonna be
$1
pushing
million
$900 million.
Yeah, that's my concern is that they're not affordable.
We have other developments that worked out that way. We have other-
Yeah, so that's that's the other, as the governor's just created this panel to look at changing the requirement for multifamily to have 2 stairs, because people are suggesting that if you could take out the second stair requirement, that space adds rentable floor area that could be living units. And they're questioning, that might help projects be affordable to be built. Because even if you look at the project that's been under construction next to the DPW, where Papagino's used to be, and then the one that's trying to get away at 1 Railroad Avenue, they are on very thin margins of profitability. And it's, I see, but as I've been doing research with the board, Bedford's at a point where a builder will give you $700,000 for your house, doesn't matter what it is, because he knows he can knock it down, build a 6,000 square foot, 6-bedroom house that'll hit the market at $2.5 million, and the numbers work between the purchase price at $700 and the sale price at $2.5. That the cost of construction in between can be absorbed with whatever profit margin they need. Yet, there are other places in the country, like if you go to western Pennsylvania into Mercer County, where there's, I don't know, people will say there's nothing happening there, but the median house price as of January is $67,000. Or you go to Little Rock, Arkansas, it's a little more expensive because the median house price has now hit $211,000. Or there's places in the suburbs of Dallas that are hitting $400,000. Right? There is nothing in eastern Massachusetts for $400,000. Vacant land is worth, you know, I mean, that, there is something wrong in the model here, that we're willing to pay so much money for the land, that I think that's, and I question whether, even in this case, when we start looking at 49 Elm Street, is part of what's driving the, you know, the request to build 8 units back there behind the existing house. A factor of how much are they paying for the property in the first place? Because to me, that's one of the bigger factors in the cost of construction. But
So is this being driven by a developer?
so this is partly by both. So this property. So if I can add Article 31 into the discussion, so we talk specifically about 49 Elm Street. So if you know, that's Rich and Nancy Doherty's house. Rich is a former planning board member and you know, things. And to be honest, when I first started, he and Art Smith came to me and explained this concept that they had brought up to the boards, you know, prior to my coming here, that wasn't really getting any traction, but they were trying to figure out how can you build retirement cottages on why does it, you know, Bedford's zoning otherwise has a range of lot sizes. The smallest we allow today is 25,000. And then we have 30,000, 40,000, or 60,000, depending upon where in town you are. And they were trying to say, but, you know, why can't you have 5,000 square foot lots or small lots like we did back in the 1940s? And so I don't know, but you know, but they had these board, because Art Smith was also a board, and you know, so this is an idea that sprung up years ago with other prior planning board members. It's been kind of sitting on the back burner for a lot of years, and now there's another player who joined the mix a year ago or so that had some ideas to, well, plus because the state created this new idea, but the problem with the 40Y starter home concept is if you buy into it, you end up ceding control of your zoning to the state, and we don't like that idea because it's just problematic. But and there's just a lot of issues with how the state wants to control it, and that's why you actually don't see any examples yet adopted across the Commonwealth. It's because the state doesn't know how to just kind of set the template, but then let the towns run with it. So,
My concerns are more how quickly we're moving. I view zoning as something that has an effect on the town over decades. And what I see as I drive around town is I see lots of construction and lots of units going in. And what comes to my mind is, do we have the water capacity? Do we have the sewer capacity? Do we have the school capacity? Do we have the road capacity? And I never really get a good answer on that because no one's looking at the overall picture. Why should they? It's a single developer doing this. He's going to have answers in it for his project. Of course, no problem for my project. So for the moment, I'm not against this for all time. I'm just against this now. I'm going to vote no on these. It's just really moving. I mean, it's unbelievable what this area is going to look like in 10 years. I mean, look at some of the stuff's going on in Lexington. I know that's out of our purview, but wow.
especially because it's Lexington.
You're going to vote no as a citizen, or you're going to vote no on this committee to recommend approval?
Both.
So I have a question on this, is I get the idea of the cottages, but nowhere does it suggest that these need to be individual buildings, as far as I can read. Am I misreading that? Or could it just be like 10 units all stacked together in a single building, essentially? Because I don't see anywhere where it says, it defines that these have to be individual cottages. Like, and I'm thinking about it also kind of from the perspective of this is in the town center, it's just trying to kind of manage the look and feel of the town and maintain the kind of historic nature versus like a big 10-unit complex almost put together seems to be kind of inconsistent with that. So I guess that's the question I have, is there anything in here about that?
I didn't bring it with me, so, I'm not gonna be able to quote it, but if in the beginning when it says allowed uses,
Is it use regulations? Attached to detached dwelling units, each unit not to exceed 1,800 square feet.
So it can't be more than 2 stories.
Right, but you could still have one big
So
building.
could you
with-
put, effectively,
Like-
could you put 10 townhouses attached on?
Right,
That is not the intent.
We can't do anything about the developer's intent.
I mean, that's like, I think one of my concerns is like, it may not be the intent, but
It doesn't make it illegal, you can. Let's say you can't, you can.
Yeah.
So, and the people involved in these two articles, does one of them live behind the firehouse?
Yes. They all live behind the firehouse.
Like adjoining the firehouse, abutting the land?
Does he abut the firehouse? Oh, you mean the new firehouse?
Yeah.
No,
oh no.
no, he lives behind the current firehouse.
You got any more questions?
No, that was my biggest concern.
Mark?
I strongly support this. I think we need to grow and sure as hell at the school capacity. And it's lamentable that these are $1 million cottages, but if it allows the Dohertys, for example, to age in place here, that's a massive win for this town.
I think for the reasons Tony stated, you're not gonna see too many aging places.
Yeah, exactly.
So
There's
some
a house that's
very
for sale,
wealthy
there's a-
starter families, bring them on, whatever.
I think we're going too fast. I
And
think we should
it's-
slow down a little bit and see what the effect actually
Yes,
is.
it's in town center, but it's effectively hidden. I mean, the existing structure is being lovingly preserved, and these new structures are invisible.
For 49 Elm Street, chances, it'd be, the new construction would be between the town center building back
Right.
here and
Right.
the existing historic house. And,
Right.
yeah, and so yes, they would preserve the main part of the historic house. They would knock off
The bar, sure.
but,
I think I can't
you know, so
imagine a better
in this
place.
particular case, it would be hidden, and then you've got duplexes along one side, and then, you know, as I say, and then to apply this opportunity elsewhere, it means going back to town meeting, you know, and if there are, if there are concerns about, you know, are we increasing, you know, school-age population by too much? I think that, you know, we face that, but because we're, you know, for water supply, we're an MWRA community, that MWRA has, for the foreseeable future, more than ample water. They're trying to find more clients.
It's not that, Tony, it's the
So-
distribution mechanism.
Oh, well, yeah, we may or may not need more pipes or to replace
Which would be
pipes in
expensive.
places because they're just, even if we don't grow, the pipes are aging in place. So even if we don't grow, we still need to replace the pipes. And so that cost is coming whether we,
Well,
That is growth to absorb.
We've been mining them a lot, which is a better and cheaper alternative. We've been doing that for years now, mining them. We
Yeah.
get so much per year.
yeah,
Anyhow,
but,
that's my opinion. I'm not changing my mind on this one.
yeah.
Thanks.
So what if the town votes yes, but then the abutters really object to it? Like, what happens then? Like, what could they
Nothing.
do? They just have to
Yeah, so the fact is,
go with it?
right, well, they would, the abutters, so the rezoning action by town meeting is not an appealable action in and of itself. It would not be till after, if town meeting approves the rezoning of this property, it would then come to the planning board for site plan review of the specifics of the construction, and that, and/or the subsequent building permits issued by code enforcement, those can be appealed. And/or the abutters can come to the planning board meeting and express their opposition as well, and just, which is what we are used to seeing is,
That's pretty common.
yeah, the abutters come and say, I'm worried about drainage, I'm worried about traffic, I'm worried about the lack of, sometimes there's, lack of sidewalks or whatever. I don't want to see it, so I'd like trees or a fence along, my property line to shield the view. So those things all get weighed when the specific construction proposal gets reviewed.
But at that point, it seems like it's already too late to have any, recourse, right?
You never have.
Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, to be honest, if abutters have concerns before this gets to that point, they should come to town meeting and
Right.
express
agree.
opposition. But, and it's weird that among the state laws, the rezoning is the one action where not only there's no requirement to notify the abutters, there's no requirement to tell the owner. Like, the town can rezone your property and doesn't have to tell you that it's coming from. So, it's an interesting sidebar, although it almost never happens, but although it has historically.
Yeah, more. To the last call around, George, anything else?
I mean, I'm gonna comment to say, I'm not supportive of it for multiple reasons. Number one, I think if we continue to agree to these developers, where to your point, they're gonna come in and pay for 700 regardless, 800,000, just because they know they can build either a bigger house or multiple cottages that will give them a premium price anyways, what's gonna happen is it's just gonna continue to drive up the land prices. That's not gonna solve all the other, that's not gonna solve the aging in places, that's not gonna solve the affordability by building more. Because all you're doing is making this developer wealthier by being able to buy land no matter what the price is, and build whatever they want on it and make sure there's a profit on return. And that's why they keep coming back asking for, instead of 6 units, let's do 10 units. Let's do 12 units because we can't afford it. And blame it on the cost of materials, labors, etc. when they went off and bought land at a very expensive price. Number two, I think I've already mentioned, I'm not bought into the pricing, the aging place aspect, given personal example. Instead of having these pockets of random developments all around town that, in my personal opinion, ends up looking quite ugly because the development's all very different. There's no kind of consistency to how they're being built, besides the building codes, etc. I'd much rather have developers work with the town to say, hey, what's a good amount, big parcel of land around town? I'm not saying I'm not saying this is the case, but for example, over at Middlesex Turnpike, if there's a huge land, much rather than thoroughly think through a community plan or elderly aging community kind of development that consists of many units, that's much nice looking. I mean, if you look at the eastern United States versus the western United States, we have pockets of houses that look, people say that's the kind of aesthetics of New England, that's the culture, where you have all these different looking houses. But then you go out west, you go into Texas, etc., south. They have a nice community that's well designed, taking into consideration the totality of the community they're being built for. And that's, in essence, developers working with either community leaders or town folks, as opposed to these just random pockets where people are asking to get development for their own kind of profit purposes. Number three, it's a historic location. The house that's currently standing there looks like a nice historical property. Would hate to see that. I mean, I know if they're keeping the front of it, but then the back of it is, I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, the clear one example I use is the one from CVS, where you have a nice historic house, but then in the whole back, you've seen that they're tearing that up, and I don't know what that's going to look like. So that leads to my next point is we have a lot of parcels that have been dedicated to these multi-unit housing based on this MBTA zoning law. Some of them are still being put in place, some of them hasn't happened. Let's let it play out. The ones that already exist, that's already agreed to, why we're agreeing to more and more parcels that we don't know what's gonna look like. Let the existing ones play out and let's see what that looks like. And if it looks good, and if it works out well, then sure, let's add more, let's continue it on. But until then, I would agree with Ben, let's take a pause. So with those considerations, I'm not supportive.
I mean, I generally like the overall concept of this. I think like the Coast Guard housing is a really nice little patch. I think it fits with the kind of look and feel of the area. I think it has a lot of nice green space and so forth. I think my biggest concern with this is I don't think you're necessarily going to get the Coast Guard house sort of thing with the way this is written, because I think, you know, if I'm a builder and I'm going to go as inexpensive as possible, I'm going to try to like minimize the number of freestanding units. So I don't see that you're going to get that. And then I think the other thing is I do agree with George. I think there's an element of like there is a bit of urgency to this, but at the same time there's also let's wait and see kind of what we wish we would have done better on MPTA and what are some key lessons learned there, and then bring that in, because I think that like just like on this, if we just pass it as is, you could have just one big block of house in the middle, and which is not necessarily the intent, but it's, you know, consistent with the zoning rules. So you know, I think I'm generally supportive of the idea. I think even, you know, a $900,000 house is a improvement from where we are, but I think it just needs more thought and more work on it. So I'm probably going to vote no on this.
You all set?
Yes.
I mean, I agree with Phil that if we're gonna call it a cottage overlay district, it would be appropriate to restrict it to that each freestanding building should be 1 or 2 families. I think that's, I think there's a valid point there. I continue to think it's a great idea and a perfect place to start. And I appreciate all the sensitivity to ADA requirements and the low first floor and the, you know, the green stuff and everything. I think it's, you know, there's a sentiment that I hear that we just want this place to look exactly the same as it is today until we die, and then we don't really care what happens, and it feels to me like pulling the ladder up behind us, and I don't like that. So I strongly support this.
I have no further questions.
Any other questions? I don't support this. I'm kind of surprised how quickly the new developments have gone up with the multifamily overlay district. It seemed like overnight, like, starts building left and right. I was kind of surprised at that. I want to see how that plays out for a little bit, and then, you know, maybe go from there. But, I mean, this does, I feel like every developer says, you know, it'll be affordable housing, but in reality, it's not. But maybe I'm just a cynic, but I'll vote no.
Yes, I'll make a comment. I'm not changing my vote, but if we really wanted to increase density, I don't know why we don't look at Middlesex Turnpike more, which has all the capacity solved. That's all new. It's all new in the ground.
But that doesn't make for a good town. That just makes it so you have to drive here to town,
400
way
years
over
ago,
there.
there was no town here. How did the town come about? They started building houses. You want Middlesex Turnpike to grow up? Start building. There's apartment buildings out there. Just, we disagree. It's the way it goes. So, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work on this. I think, my view, real quick, for what it's worth, I think with a little more work and thought, like, I think it's a good idea. It just, I think it's going to have unintended consequences right now. Thank you.
Okay.
So, is there a motion?
What is that, for number 30? It's 30 and 31, I guess.
Yes.
All right, so I motion not to approve Article 30 and 31.
Recommend disapproval?
I recommend disapproval of Article 30 and 31.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of recommending disapproval on Articles 30 and 31?
Aye.
Aye.
Why don't you raise hands so I can, so that's 4, I assume 1,
Nay.
doesn't pass. So we have no answer for that one. The other approach is to recommend approval and see what happens there, but I think I know the answer, but it will only take a few seconds to try it.
I think we save it for next week when we have more people.
Okay. So that was disapproval 410. Let's move on to something a little more happy news, Article 56 tax deferral. The floor is yours.
Well,
Feels like deja vu. Didn't we do this a year ago?
yeah,
Should we keep doing this every year just to see what happens?
no.
Might have been in the same room, too.
I thought we were downstairs.
Basement.
Right after the adjustment discussion that's been on for a really long time, too.
The cows and pictures.
So, well, we are proposing to modify an existing bylaw that nobody has used to date. We want to encourage people who own older houses to maintain them. And this would, but the thing is, of course, if you renovate a house extensively, then the valuation goes up. So this would propose a tax deferral. If somebody updates their house, spends at least 25% of the existing value of the house to fix it up, then the increase in the valuation would be phased in 1/5 increments over a period of 5 years. So if you do the math, it comes out to a 20% break on the increase in the taxes over 5 years. It never was used because, for one thing, it required people to bring their house up to the standards of the national.
National Register.
Hmm?
The National Register.
The National Register is the.
Mass Historic Commission.
Yes, and these are standards that are appropriate for like house museums, but for people's own houses, it's way too much. And we also modified what we proposed last year. The concern was that somebody could take an old house, fix up that, put a big addition out in the back, which would increase the value a whole lot, and get a tax rate on the whole thing. So we made it so that the tax deferral would only apply to the original old house. The addition, whatever they do out there, wouldn't get the break. Also, there'd been a concern about what if somebody takes an old house, strips it down to just the framework, turns it into a McMansion so that it doesn't look old, and then claims the whole tax deferral. So we modified that so that, first of all, they have to come before us with a proposal, what they plan to do. And we would insist that the old part would still maintain its historic look and feel.
All right, excuse me for a second.
Pardon me?
You just said, bring it to us. Who do you mean by?
Oh, the Historic Preservation
Just
Commission.
trying to be clear.
Oh, yes.
Plus also it'll be on the video.
Yes. I should say that this applies to houses that are outside of the historic district. Yeah, that's where Historic Preservation Commission, we have our purview. If it's in the historic district, then the Historic District Commission would administer this, but it'd be the same bylaw. So, and also we put a maximum amount up to $500,000 of the increased in assessed value would be eligible for this phase-in. So if they did more than that, they wouldn't get the tax break on anything over the $500,000 in the increase in valuation. So that's the basic thing there. What would you like to know, or what would John like to say? John is the guiding light behind all this.
What's being proposed this year is substantially the same as what we talked about this time last year. And it's written against the how the article was expressed in the warrant last year. So that's what we're doing our changes from. Last year's article was pulled at the last minute. There was still an ongoing discussion about the issue of some of these developments that were going on, where, as Lee pointed out, we might take a historic house and kind of leave it as the focal point for a much larger development, and then possibly get a value increase based on what the total project ended up being valued at. It was my opinion that the eligibility requirement was broad enough, or was specific enough, that that wouldn't be possible. I talked to the town manager about it. He kind of agreed with his opinion also. But the more I thought about it, the more it dawned on me that my opinion didn't really matter. Matt's opinion didn't matter, the town council's opinion didn't matter. If we had a developer that would see that particular possibility and be able to get much more money potentially out of it. And the problem was, if they saw that that was a revenue, enhanced revenue source, they'd probably try to exploit it and take us to court on it. And as an attorney pointed out to me, when you take this stuff to court, it's a crapshoot. So, and if the developer prevailed with that particular opinion, the whole character of this article changes. So we did pull it because of just wanting to get back into it and make what we hope is a bulletproof statement of eligibility, which I think we have ready to go for special town meeting. But the last minute question from the special town meeting, when we were reviewing that, was a concern about the amount of benefit being open-ended. And that's the reason we modified it. We didn't get on to it, because that was an open question yet from the selectmen. It didn't get put on the warrant for the special town meeting.
So we made these two changes, that it would only apply to the original old house, even if you put something new onto it, and also there'd be a maximum of $500,000 of increased value that would be eligible.
You added a scope and a cap.
Pardon me?
You added a scope and a cap.
Right.
Couldn't have said it better myself, yes. And another concern we've heard expressed is that it applies to houses that were built before 1943, and some people think, oh, those are modern houses, they're 20th century houses, but the thing is, this was before the end of World War II. After that, when you start getting the tract houses, but before that, houses were pretty much all custom design, they were pretty much all one of a kind, and of course that's the kind of thing we want to see preserved. People ask how many houses there are that was applied to. Houses built before the 20th century, there are approximately 200, believe it or not, and ones between 1900 and 1943, there are about 200 of those. And we have the list of them all, if you really want to know which ones, they're listed on the HPC website. We have the two lists there. So, but, you know, so many times we've had people come to us, you know, wanting to demolish an old house and say, well, we'd love to save this, but it just wasn't taken care of, it's falling down. And, you know, there's so few things that we can do to preserve the town's older houses, and we think that this would, you know, if we could encourage people to maintain their houses. You know, you get people who have an old house, they love it, you know, but it's expensive. So if we could give them a little encouragement in this form, that could help.
Thank you. George?
No comments, it makes sense. I like the cap, I like the changes made, so looks good to me.
Phil?
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this. I think anything we can do to help maintain historic homes is having them knocked down and a large kind of characterless home built in place. And even if you're adding to it on the back, if you're maintaining at least the kind of front with the historic home, I think it makes a lot of sense. And especially given that you're focusing the tax benefit on that historic portion, I think prevents the, like, across from CVS where you've got the massive development happening. Like, you still got that house being saved and renovated, and if it costs us a little bit to do that, I'm supportive of that.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm supportive of this. I supported it last year. I think the tweaks are good tweaks. I think this is a win for the financial value of the town.
Hopefully this year gets it across the finish line.
The scope and the cap help a lot.
Pardon me?
I think they help a lot. People can see there's a cap on it.
Yeah.
You also scope it out to be not everything.
And I appreciate, real quick, sorry, I appreciate how you guys took the feedback, took the advice, and went back and kind of continued to refine it. I think that's a piece that, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but the builders tend to think about every loophole and use it. And so I think, you know, as we saw with the last article we just discussed, it's why I think like this one, the little bit, the extra year is a good thing.
I agree. Oh, I'm sorry.
You all set? I'm all set.
No, I was gonna say, I agree with the cap and the, you know, the tax deferral. My only concern is someone picking apart the article to their benefit. And, you know, I don't know, you'll still get capped at $100,000, but I feel like developers, to be profitable, they have to look for an edge. Whether that edge is cheaper materials or maybe, you know, sidestepping an article or something. I don't know. I just don't want that to happen. If you say you're confident that it's only going to apply to historical homes capped at 500,000, 20% of that is 100,000, period, let's do it. You know what I mean? I just don't want someone, you know, some high-powered attorney picking at this thing and say, I think we could do it a little bit differently.
It's only gonna apply, I think we have it nailed down to the point where it's only gonna apply to a single house.
Okay. Are you comfortable with the way it's written and?
Yes.
Well, of course, the thing about developers is, they can take an old house and just knock it down. All we can do is put an 18-month demo delay on it, and most developers can wait that long.
Well, we've had it, most of the time when they come into a project like this, one of the first things they do is they go to the building inspector for a demolition permit. And by the bylaws, we're required to hear that within a particular time period. So within a month, we have the review, the hearing, and start the clock. We've had some cases of development out on the into South Road where 18 months came and gone. They were still getting final approvals going through the regular approval process with the town. 18 months later, it'd be 18 months beyond that. So the approval process took care of the demolition delay.
Right. That's what you're saying.
So to your point, and a developer who wanted to juggle with this, why would they even bother? Nobody's gonna renovate an old house unless they really want to. So,
I would, not to sort of monkey wrench or anything like this in it, but developers, if the developer owns a house, he can apply for it. We've had people who sold a house to developers hoping that he would, you know, develop it. He can, he may be able to, he would be able to be eligible for this, the likelihood of him taking a single house and to be able to get this and the building, the benefit goes with the house. It doesn't stay with the original application of that person. Okay, so if he's developing a house and going to sell it, well, the benefit still goes with the house.
Right.
So it can become, for a developer, it could become one of the incentives for being able to sell the
That's
house.
true.
So,
That's a good point.
when that, we will react with developers, we still have to.
I didn't think of that. It's a good point.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I move the finance committee recommend approval of Article 21, the general bylaw amendment tax deferral for renovated historic properties.
Is there a second?
Second. I second, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Defer? It passes.
Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long. I can never get the perfect order of lineup. It's pretty much what Brian Buck first goes first. Thank you for staying. That's approval.
What do we have left?
Well, we'll want to run through some of these to make sure that we, like, I don't think we've done the charter and the bylaw amendments. Talked about them a little bit, but I don't think we voted on them. So let me just walk through this. The police collective bargaining is a recommended ATM. I heard that they settled, but that's an easy editing fix over the next couple of days once I get a hold of it now. I have the citizens petition for the select board budget as a disapproval. I have prudent investor rule. You recall that one, do I have that as recommended ATM? Pretty sure that's what we did.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at it.
You wanna look, I mean, the
More
options,
information was shared with us.
Yeah,
the options are simple. We
I-
recommend it, we disapprove it, or we take it, we can,
I will say I read the extra information and became less comfortable with it in terms of kind of my view is it seems like it's giving more options to invest more broadly with riskier funds over a longer period of time, which I think for this sort of thing is not necessarily proven to be a good idea through history. So I unless there's something big I'm missing, I don't support it. But I don't know if we want to discuss it more tonight or wait for
let's grab the bull by the horns. We only got it next week and then just before town meeting, so.
I'm not gonna support it either. I think, especially since it's related to finances, I feel like it should have been presented to us as well as in the select board. I think it's missing a lot of detail and it leaves some more questions than answers, to be honest. I still not sure how much, what this would apply to in terms of dollars. Is it $1 million? Is it $50,000? I don't know. That's
It looks like it applies to any of our trust funds, so OPEB, the cemetery fund, like,
It's not like the general reserve. It is the funds.
right.
That's, I like that at least there was some attempt to limit the scope of what it could apply to.
I mean, but they're massive funds. It's not
I
like,
think there's some pretty big ones that it wouldn't apply to. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. I see which way the wind is blowing on this, and I actually agree with it. I don't have any questions at the moment because I've read it a couple of times, but I'm okay with saying not
I
so.
mean, what's your perspective on it if you've read it? And I'm sure you were at the select board meeting.
I don't have any reason why I don't like it that would kill it. I don't like the feel of it, which I think is a weird way of saying I'm agreeing with you. It's a weird way of saying it, but I don't like the feel of it.
Yeah.
It feels like it's, what's gonna happen if we don't approve it? We lose a little bit of money, maybe in the best case. Do you think with the current economy this week that we're gonna lose any money?
I mean, I think that's my concern
It's economics.
with OPEB, with the cemetery trust fund, with things like that. Those are things where capital preservation is utmost importance, right? And to me, I get kind of the recommendation was like, oh, it's prudent to invest in you can invest in stocks and bonds and things like that if you're not going to use it over the next 10 years. But I think, California trust funds saw similar sorts of things back in the 90s, and that makes me very uncomfortable. I mean, like, Finance 101 is, for trust funds, you do capital preservation, right? So, but that's kind of where I
To
am.
me, some of it is also in just the name. It it applies to the methods that you're using, you're being prudent, but it also applies to the name of the person who's doing the investing, who thinks they're prudent. So-
Exactly.
So it's, to me, as soon as I read that, I was like, well, what's going on here? Feels like a marketing move.
Yeah, I would agree.
So do you have any more questions?
I have no more
Do
questions.
you have any questions, Mark?
No.
Do you guys want to clean this one up and take a vote?
Yeah, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend disapproval of Article, what is it?
It's Article 20, prudent investor rule.
Article 20, the prudent investment rule, acceptance, so, yeah.
Was there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Defer? Which is really also abstain. I've got deferral in the brain from the last article, so I'll mark that down as our recommendation is disapproval. The next two are hard. They're a bit of work. They're the charter amendment substantive and the charter and the bylaw substantive changes. So there are a lot of changes. For instance, one of them was moving town meeting and all the ripples that came out of that.
I thought we already did the
I
town
didn't
meeting.
think we worked through that one yet, because there's a lot in there. Now, having said that, on a personal level, I've read it a couple of times, I agree with it, so I can't dish back to you what's in that one, because it was okay by me. And I
Is
figured
this
you all
22?
got out of first grade, you can all read. There's two of them. There's 26 charter amendments substantive and 28 general bylaw amendments substantive.
Okay. Yeah, I recommend approval of Article 26. Or I move that Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 26.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait, so sorry, 26 and what?
26 is the one.
It's the charter.
Well, what though?
It's,
Remove supervised.
Well, it does things like change Constitution to United States Constitution, so there's stuff like that in there.
This is the appointment authority, right?
this is the one where it's basically the planning director and Heidi are going to go under, Tony and Heidi are going to go under Matt. But Jacqueline would stay under the board of.
I feel compelled to say this, even though I know it's gonna cause trouble. I'm still getting some pressure to find out the status of your, whatever we called it last week, conflict of interest form that you're supposed to file.
Do I need to file another one?
I don't know. I've been trying to stay out of this.
Who's asking?
One of the select board members.
Oh my God, he needs to stop. Yeah, I'll file, tell him I'll file it next week. And then we can vote.
I think it was more about Alan. I don't think he did one last year.
Alan doesn't have a conflict of interest. Alan's wife is not voted in yet.
So, Phil, there's you, there's me, there's somebody over here. which
I'm
puts
just
me
saying,
in
what's
the-
Alan's conflict of interest?
I'm not representing that I think this is a problem. I'm repeating what I said
Okay.
for your benefit.
I mean,
is this getting so much traction?
because one select board member is really opposed to it, and for some reason, the
No.
select board wants a power grab with this, is the way I read
Actually, I thought in
this.
the end what they
No,
actually
I
recommended
understand
was no
that.
change.
No, but that's what I'm saying, but like, there was no recommendation by the select board, because it comes across that the select board has a very strong desire to power grab from the other committees, is how I'm reading this. Because the select board controls the town manager, right? And the town manager is now getting all of the power from the other elected boards.
Well,
And
he's
the
getting,
argument is that,
I really don't want to argue this, but my understanding is it's worded the same way the charter's been worded for years, which is he's involved in it, he has to be part of the approval loop. It's not one person rule. But I don't want to go any deeper than that, because I don't really want to argue this.
Right.
I really, really don't. I'd much rather see town meeting move.
So we can wait, and I'll file a new form with the committees to ensure that it's clear.
I can't speak to the other one, I just don't know.
Yeah,
So you want to
I
sit
didn't
on
realize I needed
26?
to file that every year, but I'll confirm with the ethics committee as well.
Really? Well, I think if this works the way it does, you're gonna hate me. I think I'm on the ethics committee.
No, I'm saying the state.
Oh, the state, okay, sorry, because there's, who you file the form with is the appointing authority, and for
Yeah, and there's, according to the state ethics commission, I don't need to get approval, I just
no,
need
that's
to
actually, to
inform.
me, that's the funniest thing of all of this is, you inform, and then you've done all you have to do, that's it.
Yeah,
There's no constraints, there's no choices, there's just,
yeah, no,
like,
it's,
thank you for giving us this letter,
exactly.
okay?
Which, that's why I didn't realize I needed to do it every year.
I don't really know, I've been trying to stay out of this.
And it's interesting that there were no concerns about me voting on the actual budget, but the concern is related to the select board getting control over the library director, so that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I don't think I would have worded it that way, but I really want to put an end to this discussion. So,
So what raised this warrant? Whose warrant is this and how did it get brought up? Like why the change now?
there's a committee called the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, which runs every 5 years for bylaws and every 10 years for charter, although we seem to be doing them in tandem these days. They came through and they were trying to clarify some of the language, which they have good intentions, they try hard. The year they did the Oxford Commas, they thought they were clarifying the language. Anyhow, that's where it came from. It's a select board committee, so the select board has to, like all articles, they grant permission to put an article on the warrant, and that's how this got here. But I'm happy to run away on 26 and let stew for another week, if that's what everyone would like to do.
Well, if I'm
Yeah,
out,
it's a good idea.
then I shouldn't, if there's concerns, then I shouldn't vote, and then you don't have a quorum anyway, so.
So we're gonna leave 26's recommendation at ATM?
Yes.
Okay, that moves us to 28, which gets us to the substantive part of the general bylaws. And I don't know what the substantive piece is here. There's a lot of stuff, municipal housing trust, capital expenditure committee, volunteer coordinating committee, sign bylaw, they all have edits in them. Streets and sidewalks and public property disappeared. We can vote this tonight. If you want to meet again next week, and I'm always listing it as an option, because I'll just assume we're gonna meet, we can do it next week. It'll probably be the fastest meeting we ever had, but there's no real problem with that either, is there?
We did a 60-second meeting, an annual town meeting.
Yeah, but this is gonna be actually a real meeting, so.
Okay. I mean, I reviewed the changes in as much detail as I could stomach. I think it's careful, thoughtful work. I don't see anything of financial detriment to the town unless we're...
Personally, neither do I, but I gotta worry about everybody, so.
Sure, sure.
I agree with that.
Phil, if we're gonna do it next week, you don't need to do speed reading now, if you don't want to.
No, I've read it, I'm fine with it.
Oh, okay. You're fine with it, we vote it, or fine with it, we should wait a week?
No, I'm fine voting now if we want.
So move we recommend approval.
Because this one is independent of anything related to the library, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
These are the bylaw amendments.
These are the bylaw, the big bylaw amendments, the
The substantive.
Yeah.
I move we recommend approval of the substantive bylaw amendments.
Which is
Currently Article
28,
28.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recommend approval. Then we have the two for Tony's things that get disapproval because they took muster of the votes. And then we have the free cash, which has to be at the end, so that's recommended, it's gonna stay at recommended ATM. Bills of prior year, if we happen to find a bill that comes in by the time town meeting happens, that's why that's recommended ATM, but it never happens, it's almost pro forma. That gets us through that, which is nice, thank you, I appreciate your patience. Then I have ATM prep. You guys have all seen this before, you know what we're gonna do. We'll have a meeting beforehand, which at the moment is scheduled for the conference, the large group instruction conference room. The less we have to do, the less there's a reason to get away from the front of the auditorium. So I'll suggest, and I know that'll make Mark happy, that we just go with the front of the auditorium for the one or two things we have to do at 6 p.m. Informational, but if you get a problem, you should holler.
Works for me. And to be clear, it's not about making me happy, I just won't come if it's an LG.
I'm just yanking your chain a little here. Come on, you know it's coming. I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, how do you want to do articles? There's lots of models. We could have everybody get up and do a little speech for each article. It takes a long time. And we have to play Jack in the Box.
I think the chair should respond to questions.
I agree.
Should or shouldn't?
Should.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
You do a fine job, Ben.
So this is just a philosophical statement for the future, if you ever want to know what's going through my head. Everything for me is, what did the committee say? I'm not gonna get up there and say, well, Phil said, and, you know, George liked it. I'm never gonna say that, nor will I ever read what the vote was. It passed or it didn't pass. The committee had this opinion or it didn't. Now, there's some interesting cases where someone says, what do you think? And you notice I almost always say, I'm not a mind reader, I'm not gonna try and represent what was going on in someone's head. They weren't comfortable with it. If there's a salient phrase that's easy to deal with, right? Nobody likes pepper on their Tabasco sauce. I mean, something that's just almost statement of fact, I will say that. So, but you guys have seen me in action before, so that's my plan going forward.
How's your letter?
Yeah,
Do you want help?
that's not why I'm pausing. You've probably noticed over time that I'm really a big proponent of moving town meeting back because we just never had time to get anything done. Well, this year the letter timed out before I got to it, and I didn't know it had timed out. I want town meeting pushed back so bad you can't imagine. Anyhow, I read it, it's not that awful. I think what I can do is, if you recall, there's the letter at the front of the warrant, which is neutral. It really is very neutral. This was this many dollars, this was that many dollars. Then there's two presentations just before the budget. And I go through and talk about, you know, we're half of free cash we're using, and we use 53%. OPEB's 5%, yeah, we paid that. But, so I go through those in two slideshows. One is more budget, one's where are we financially, the other one's nitty-gritty budget stuff. Those I'm having the finance director go through and put the numbers in for me, so I have an unequivocal source of information. That I don't have back yet. Pretty much, actually I want to say exactly, but I don't dare. Pretty much the stuff you saw last year for town meeting, it's the same thing this year, but different numbers. I will probably be unable to keep my mouth shut about how I feel about what we're doing and where we're going, and that we need to be very careful with our spend rate. We've spent a lot of money over the last few years. We're looking at some pretty nasty scenarios. I won't use the word nasty. Some pretty challenging scenarios coming up in the future for where the budgets are. I just want people not to walk out of here thinking everything's fine, because I don't think everything's fine. Do I think we're gonna all fall into a pit? No, I do not think that, but I think we need to be careful. And unless you guys wanna tell me, don't say that. Because as you've heard, my phrase that I've used for all the years I've been on this committee is, I will do what this committee asks me to do. And if you guys want it to be, we should be careful, that's what I'm gonna say. If it's, you know, la-di-da, party time, that's what I'm gonna say. I won't believe it, but that's what I'm gonna say.
I mean, I think there will be members of the public who stand up. You know, I think we set the tone last year, and we held a hard line at 2.5%
Yeah.
in our guideline, and I think that had the desired effect. I think there will be people who stand up and
I can name
make a
them.
case that we're not pumping the brakes hard enough.
Oh, I can name who's
But
gonna stand up.
sure, but we don't have to do that.
No, we're not, I wasn't going to, it's just,
I could name them too.
yeah.
But I think, but my recommendation is that your tone continue the tone of last year, that we are really pumping the brakes,
Yeah.
and that we,
That's why I did it last year, because I could
that-
see the wall coming. and I
yeah,
said,
it's
"I
not
can't."
even cautious optimism, it's just caution.
It's, well, I think
Period.
actually I was really clear, we're gonna have an override within 3 years. I was showing the wall painted red, big stop sign on it.
Well, it's not happening this year, so that's good.
It's not this year and it won't be next year, I don't
One year at a time.
I think we might be close. We'll see, I mean,
Maybe we could get some more families in town to pay taxes and go to school. Build some more houses.
Build,
if you
baby,
really
build.
wanna build a village, go out to Middlesex Turnpike, build it the way you want it.
I want to build a village where people don't need cars to get their friggin' food.
So put a food store out there,
I want neighbors.
put more houses out there,
Move to the city.
move to the city, yeah. Anyhow, now we're just getting silly. That's all I can think of for town meeting. I don't know that anyone has a crystal ball. Given all the stuff in here, my personal, you know, I'll bet you a nickel is, it's 4 nights, but I don't know.
Oh, really?
Do you see how much discussion goes on about these things? Come on, tell me, how wrong can I be on that?
I could see 3 max, I don't know about 4.
3 will be tough, but yeah, I mean, that's what
I'm
I'm
good for
hoping.
one night.
I just, actually, that was sort of my way of testing. Who can't be here?
I can't be here more than 2 nights.
Right.
I've got kids.
I don't think it.
Well,
If they need me.
I just kind of want to know who's going to be around, just for intellectual purposes, in case for some reason we need you, but,
I'll be there the first night with bells on and my
well, you'll have
flag.
is it called the uniform?
Sure.
I-
There we go.
Yeah, I didn't know what the term is.
So we'll be in my uniform, yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that.
It's my pleasure. I get to climb the pole this year too.
Go get him, Tiger. I don't think I could have the wherewithal to climb the pole, and I guess if I didn't look down,
It's not that tall.
it's tall enough. And it's a splintered delivery device if you slip. Anyhow, thank you for doing it. Is there any, meetings attended, George,
Nope.
Phil,
Nope.
Mark,
No.
Tom.
None.
Most of the select board meeting was on the upcoming town meeting. So they talked about the energy and sustainability initiatives and how they plan to set that up with a job description for the person they're looking for. That went for a little while. There's also a article on town meeting about how to spend the money on that stuff. TAC came in and talked about the regulations around using road safety cameras. So these are stoplight cameras. The state's thinking about approving them, and TAC wants to see Bedford tag onto that effort. Did I get that wrong, or did I get that right?
Thanks, Ben. So who pays for that?
You're
I
right.
haven't been, no.
Oh, okay.
I used to be on back.
Who, yeah.
If I remember the details, the money that comes in goes to the state minus the amount of overhead to keep it running and to pay for maintenance. So the state's the one actually getting the money.
So the
Half
same.
the red lights are on the state highways.
They reviewed the warrant, and that's it. I mean, it was mostly an ATM meeting. Anything else? Meet next Thursday?
Minutes?
Oh, that's right, we do we have?
Minutes.
Yeah.
Excellent minutes. Detailed, comprehensive, thorough, professional.
This is where getting prepared hurts me. I read them and probably forgot that I read them.
I read them and saw no need for
So that would
correction
be,
unless there's discussion. I would happily move that we recommend.
that'd be March 5,
Yeah, we could go.
March 5 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, unless there's discussion, I move we recommend that we have it in the record.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, we approve the minutes of March 5th. We only had one set, all right. Thank you. I think,
Move it to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, we are adjourned as of 8:28 PM.
Awesome.